Good evening, everyone. Namaste. So we would be doing our Friday Indian section Mahatma Letters study class from the book The Mahatma Letters to Sinnet, Appendix-II. Before we start the introduction of our today's speaker and go ahead with the study class, let me invoke the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. We would be continuing the appendix 2, and today will be the first part. This was edited by Brother Vic. Our today's speaker is Sister Sonal MURLI. We all of us know her. However, as a ritual, I would be introducing her. Sister Sonal is the director, ATA, Theosophical Society, Adyar. She joined the Theosophical Society at a very early age of 19 years after reading At the Feet of the Master. After finishing her post-graduation in English, for which she received a gold medal, she came to Adyar to work at the headquarters. She had the privilege working closely with Radhaji for theosophical publications and magazines. Sonalji was the secretary of the New Life for India movement and editor of its magazine, Wake Up India. She is the founding director of the chapter Beauty Without Cruelty for Chennai and conducted many outreach programs to bring about awareness for animal rights. Anyone who has visited Adyar during the convention would have seen the stalls, the outlets, and the kind of leaflets and write-ups and the activities Beauty Without Cruelty this chapter displays. Sonalji worked for a Krishnamurti school for a decade and thereafter for unprivileged children in various parts of the country. She again returned to Adyar in 2018 and established a theosophical school, Adyar Theosophical Academy, which is going to celebrate its 6th anniversary this June. Congratulations for this, ma'am. And now I request Sonalji to take it up as a session. This is going to be her first part. Thank you, ma'am, for giving out your time for such a session. And over to you now. I've already made you the co-host, so you could share any material you want to show.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Today we are going to study the Chohan's letter. To start with a very brief introduction to the Mahatma letters, they are considered one of the most difficult and important texts in the theosophical literature. They are also considered not just invaluable but the primary source of information about ancient wisdom, and they touch on many tangled situations as practical guidance and support given at that time. The message remains timeless. Today, as I said, we are going to study the Chohan's letter. This is a facsimile of the Chohan's letter in Sinnet's handwriting. This is believed to have been written in 1880. Though it is not signed directly by the Chohan, it is a guiding document to this day for the entire theosophical movement. This is a summary by Master KH of a conversation held with the Chohan in reference to some argument that AP Sinnet and AO Hume were posting about reforming the nature of the Theosophical Society. Jinraj Das regarded this as the most important letter received from the adept teachers, as it is a communication from the Chohan. Chohan is one of the three adepts, three great adepts who form the triangle of the occult hierarchy, and to whose insight the future lies like an open page. The letter outlines the society's mission and ethical framework. It also gives several reasons why the TS should be a brotherhood of humanity. Over decades, this letter has been a source of inspiration to many members of the TS. It is suffused with the spirit of compassion and altruism that guided the founders of the society in all their work. It commits the Theosophical Society to altruism, truth, universal brotherhood, but also to an earnest dissemination of the teachings of Theosophy as a gateway to a life of freedom from superstition, fear, and self centeredness. This is an incomparable document issued by one of the truly great ones on this earth. It contains practically the charter for the work and development of the Theosophical Society throughout the ages. Little background will be required for us to understand how this letter came about. Mr. Sinnet and Mr. Hume were both very proud. Mr. Sinnet was proud by race, and Mr. Hume with the overweening pride of a superior intellect. Both were profoundly convinced that they knew the Western world far better than the adepts. When the adepts proclaimed the true significance of their attempt to influence the world through the Theosophical Society, which was to mold the world towards a larger and truer sense of brotherhood than the religions had so far accomplished. These two, Sinnet and Hume, they informed the adepts that there was no future of the TS in the West along that line. They suggested performing certain phenomena under test conditions to convince the European scientists at that time. So their emphasis was on the need for psychic powers and phenomena above the principles of universal brotherhood. They again and again insisted that they knew the world better than the adepts. And at one point, it seems that Master K.H. said that I feel tired and weary of these never-ending disputations. The more I try to explain, the less they understand me. It was at this time that Master K.H. approached the Chohan, and then we have this communication. And this is what has come to be known as the Chohan's letter, because it contains practically the charter for the work and development of the Theosophical Society throughout the ages. And the letter itself does not mince words. In no uncertain terms, the letter outlines the society's mission and ethical framework. Now, the key concepts which are mentioned are universal brotherhood above all, spiritual altruism versus selfish liberation, reform, not dogma, bridging science and spiritual wisdom, battle against materialism and moral decline, sowing the seeds for future generation, practical theosophy, ethics in action, about leading a pure, altruistic, and philanthropic life. C. Jinratdas says that since 1999, when he first discovered the letter, he has had the occasion to read it again and again. And he says on each occasion, it was like some special phrase or thought that will just shine out very brilliantly to him as he was reading. And he will feel a kind of sense of the vastness of the outlook of this great adept who tells us what he sees of man's civilization and the way the world stands today. Now, the vision of men, events, and things which characterizes every adept, as revealed in the letters received from few of them, is that of beings who live in the eternal. They have before them the plan of evolution as it shall be. And so they judge with a measuring rod which not even the most advanced of men possess. And so they are looking at it. Their vision is as if from a very vaster and very loftier plane. It is as if he were the great god of Olympus. And from the summit of that mountain, sees all mankind spread out before him, and there is no secret hidden corner which is unrevealed. The first statement of this letter is very often quoted and well known. The doctrine we promulgate, being the only true one, must, supported by such evidence as we are preparing to give, become ultimately triumphant as every other truth. At some other place, also, the Master says that the term universal brotherhood is no idle phrase. Humanity in the mass has a paramount claim upon us. The doctrine of universal brotherhood and the oneness of existence. Here, the emphasis is on the only true one. Chohan's vision is vaster and from a loftier plane. See, Jinraj Das says that it is as if he were the great god of Olympus, and from there he sees the mankind spread out before him. Now, the Chohan, from his vision, knows where the diseased spot is in the civilization today, which causes untold suffering to mankind. And as we all know, self interest is the highest in today's times. And hence he mentions that the doctrine we promulgate being the only true one. And that is why all the old superstitions and the errors of religion must be patiently examined and compared with the new doctrines before they are rejected. Such a work of very steady, systematic, silent influence is what is expected of all the theosophists and all those who write for our society. And that is why the Master says, Colonel H.S. Olcott, who works but to revive Buddhism, may be regarded as one who labors in the true path of theosophy, far more than any other man who chooses as his goal the gratification of his own ardent aspirations for occult knowledge. Buddhism, stripped of its superstitions, is the eternal truth, and he who strives for the latter is striving for theosophia, divine wisdom, a synonym of truth. Later on, there is more about the two paths actively serving humanity and the bliss of liberation. The Master says further on, for our doctrines to practically react on the so called moral or the ideas of truthfulness, purity, self denial, charity, etc., we have to preach and popularize a knowledge of theosophy. And so this is very important. And as I said earlier, this is a steady, systemic, silent influence, is what is expected of all the theosophies and all those who work for the societies. The Master says it is not the individual and determined purpose of attaining oneself nirvana, the culmination of all knowledge and absolute wisdom, which is after all only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, to cause as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it, which constitutes the true theosophist. And this we are told again and again later on. Madame Blavatsky writes about it in The Voice of the Silence. In the first part of the book, she introduces the concept of the two paths that the spiritual seeker has to choose from. And these paths are represented as the path of renunciation and the path of selfless service, or the path of the Bodhisattva. The path of renunciation, it calls for renouncing worldly attachments, desires, and distractions. It emphasizes meditation, self-discipline, and the pursuit of spiritual knowledge. It is a solitary path and is often associated with asceticism. The path of Bodhisattva, which is compassionate action and service to others. This is This encourages individuals to engage with the world, helping those in need and working for the betterment of humanity. It is considered a more challenging but fulfilling path. Now, Madam Blavatsky emphasizes that both paths are valid and can lead to spiritual enlightenment depending on an individual's temperament and readiness. The key is to cultivate inner qualities like compassion, selflessness, and wisdom, regardless of the chosen path. And now, O teacher of compassion, point thou the way to other men. Behold, all those who knocking for admission await in ignorance and darkness to see the gate of sweet law flung open. The second fragment opens with the Guru addressing the candidate who is nearing the summit of the path, where he'll have to make a choice. And the question arises, will the disciple go onward into nirvanic bliss, heedless of those left behind, floundering in their ignorance? Or will he turn back from the threshold and help humanity? This is the choice of the two paths. In Voice of the Silence, the candidate asks, shalt not thou, master of thine own mercy, reveal the doctrine of the heart? Shalt thou refuse to lead thy servants unto the path of liberation? The candidate is not as yet too sure which path he should take. It is said that as the Lord Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree on the morning following his illumination, he too doubted whether the world would understand the knowledge he wished to impart to it. Suddenly he heard a voice of the earth in pain, which cried, surely I am lost. I am, I and my creatures. O Supreme, let thy great law be uttered. This is from Light of Asia, Book the Seventh. The two paths, writes HPB, are defined thus. She says the open path is one taught to the layman, the exoteric and the generally accepted, while the secret path is one the nature of which is explained at initiation. The secret heart of things is revealed in the esoteric doctrine, touching on the inner mysteries. The tree of knowledge is a title given to those who have attained to the height of mystic knowledge. The tree also represents man, with his roots deep in the mire of earth life, subjecting him to the ravages of time, while his branches stretch heavenward, ever aspiring toward the Godhead. There is a tree in ancient symbolism depicted with its roots in heaven and branches stretching down toward earth. This tree suggests spiritual union, having passed beyond the need for earthly sustenance. It showers its fruits upon all who need spiritual guidance. There is no more thought of self at this stage. The whole of humanity is part of himself. Now, this is from the Chohan's letter. The intellectual portions of mankind seem to be fast dividing into two classes. The one unconsciously preparing for itself long periods of temporary annihilation or states of non consciousness, owing to the deliberate surrender of their intellect, its imprisonment in the narrow grooves of bigotry and superstition, a process which cannot fail to lead to the utter deformation of the intellectual principle. The other unrestrainedly indulging its animal propensities with the deliberate intention of submitting to annihilation, pure and simple, in cases of failure to millenniums of degradation after physical dissolution. In the first letter that Master Keats writes to A.O. Hume, he says, a man can only think in his worn grooves, and unless he has the courage to fill up these and make new ones for himself, he must perforce travel on the old lines. And these grooves are something which confine us, which limit us, and in which we perpetually go round and round, thinking in the same way. Because groove is a very narrow channel which has been cut, in which the thoughts keep circling round and round like the gramophone record pin. Bigotry is to have one's own prejudice and obstinate, intolerant views against other ideas, against other races, against other religions, etc. The most pernicious habit, Radha Bernier says, is to divide everything. Divisiveness, it's a basis of conflict and suffering. And this is what the groove does. And the Mahatma tells us about our imprisonment in the narrow grooves of bigotry. Bigotry is prejudices, intolerance against any other ideas. Superstition is completely irrational, unfounded, unverified, blind belief, and unscientific beliefs. And both these, superstition and materialism, they are both self created miseries. They are created by us, and are not able to escape from that. And there are many these ruts in which the mind falls without even knowing why it is doing so. And people unconsciously repeat ideas and adopt the attitudes, prejudices, and animosities which surround them, the times in which we live. The master says that those intellectual classes reacting upon the ignorant masses which they attract and which look up to them as noble and fit examples to follow, degrade, and morally ruin those who ought to protect and guide. And here is also the very often quoted statement, between degrading superstition and still more degrading brutal materialism, the white dove of truth has hardly room where to rest her weary, unwelcome foot. This sentence is metaphorical and a poetic way of expressing a concern about the state of truth in a society which is dominated by these two harmful extremes, superstition and brutal materialism. Degrading superstition refers to the irrational beliefs or practices that ignore reason or evidence. And the materialism has been termed as still more degrading, brutal materialism, with focus purely on the physical or the material world, which is at the highest point today with its consumerism. And it denies spiritual, emotional, or ethical dimensions of life, because there is this overwhelming force in which we all are
बेटा
brought in.
हाँ
Now, here truth has been personified
मैं तो बेटा अब ये करती हूँ कि ना
as the white
जिमीकंद
dove.
को थोड़ा सा घी या तेल जिसमें ही बनाना हो।
Now, this white dove is a symbol of peace and purity. The dove of truth's wings have been called weary. Weary wings. Weary means tired. And it shows that these forces of blind beliefs and unexamined thoughts and the materialism are more pronounced today. It is not just exhausted, but unwanted. And that is why the second adjective used is unwelcome. There is hardly any room where to rest her weary, unwelcome foot. So it's unwanted in this world which is dominated by ignorance and cold, soulless realism that became prominent after the scientific advent of industrialization. So, in such times, there is little space left for genuine truth to be recognized or valued. The Mahachohan shows where is the diseased spot in civilization today, whence an infection has spread everywhere, causing untold suffering to mankind. This is the struggle for existence, which has steadily become sharper and more violent because of the onward sweep of the modern civilization. And as I said earlier, self interest is the highest in these times, which is a complete identification with the vehicle, has made the consciousness go opaque. And as the master says earlier, both are self created miseries. Radha Bernier provides us with insight. She writes that the first and primary condition for one who would follow the religion of truth is a profound and persistent interest in finding it. This implies not having prejudgments or a conviction that one knows already. Truth cannot be discovered by a mind which has fixations, prejudices, and biases of any kind. So the mind must become pure and unruffled, free from opinions, biases, and self centered emotions. For only in this state can there be an awareness of truth. She also points us in the direction of remaining open minded and consistently inquisitive. She says we must question everything, even our most deeply held beliefs. Once we stop questioning, our beliefs begin to crystallize. They become dogma, and this crystallization spells doom for our own development and in our search for truth. We become stuck and stagnant. This is reinforced in her additional comments in the same article, where she says the wise man does not come to any conclusion about the truth of things, and only one who keeps a continually open mind can find the truth. And that is why in Theosophical society, the freedom of thought is has been given. It's one of the key pillars on which the society rests. In terms of organizations, the Theosophical Society is unique because of its lack of dogma and its encouragement that each must find his or her own way. Open minded inquiry keeps us and our journeys alive and growing. In 1890, in Lucifer, Madame Blavatsky has written in an article the dual aspect of wisdom. She says, valuing freedom of thought above all things is the only way of reaching at some future time that wisdom of which every theosophist ought to be enamored. We recognize the right to the same freedom in our foes as in our friends. Master Cage writes in letter 120, chronological number, not even the president founder has the right directly or indirectly to interfere with the freedom of thought of the humblest member of the Theosophical Society. This basic theosophical precept regarding freedom of thought, it keeps us from standing in one spot and proclaiming that we alone have the truth. In this letter, we read the following: for our doctrines to practically react on the so called moral code or the ideas of truthfulness, purity, self denial, charity, etc., we have to preach and popularize a knowledge of theosophy. It is not the individual and determined purpose of attaining oneself nirvana, the culmination of all knowledge and absolute wisdom, which is, after all, only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, to cause as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it, which constitutes the true theosophies. Therefore, as theosophies, the Chohan adjures us to share the divine wisdom in order to help humanity. We share theosophy through our words, our beliefs, but more importantly and finally, through our actions. We encourage self awareness. Lead lives that align with the theosophical teachings of unity, study, meditation, and service. We provide an open and inviting environment in which individuals can seek their own path to truth. Unfortunately, we are all aware of those who claim to be theosophists, but who also claim to possess the truth with their perspective of theosophical concepts, being not only the right way, but also the only way. These two statements, being a theosophist and possessing truth, are in total contrast with one another. The dogmatic attitude of such a statement inhibits the sharing of divine wisdom with those who are earnestly seeking. And therefore, again and again, we are reminded in this letter about the inner transformation, the reform, the regeneration, and not of dogma, of not becoming dogmatic. So, as theosophists, the letter tells us that we must remain open minded, searching for glimpses or even reflections of the truth in every corner, in every book, in every quiet whisper from within. And in this sense, the path and the truth and theosophy for us has to be alive, it has to be live. It is an open minded seekers that we will share the magnificence of the divine wisdom through our words, thoughts, and actions, and encouraging others to seek truth in their own way through this pathless land. The Mahatma says it is time that theosophy should enter the arena. He's speaking about this in the year of 1880, when the on one hand there were multitudes of superstitious people, and on the other hand, because of the advent of science and industrialization, there was this blind, brutal materialism that had come into being. And he says it is time that theosophy should enter the arena. And the most important statement, which has become the cornerstone and the charter for the society, is given here. The Theosophical Society was chosen as the cornerstone, the foundation of the future religion of humanity. To achieve the proposed object, a greater, wiser, and especially a more benevolent intermingling of the high and the low, of the alpha and omega of society was determined upon. The white race must be the first to stretch out the hand of fellowship to the dark nations. Now, this is a very important statement that the master has made. And he says he is no theosophist who objects to this principle. There are millions of hungry, homeless people. The inequality is at its highest now. There is an unequal distribution of wealth. There is there are the exploited and the exploiter. The corporate greed is controlling the consumerism. And what Master said at that time remains true today, that the privileged have to be the first to stretch out the hand of fellowship for the unprivileged. The master says again here that how is the combative natural instinct of man to be restrained from inflicting hitherto unheard of cruelties and enormities, tyranny, injustice, etc., if not through the soothing influence of a brotherhood and of the practical application of Buddha's esoteric doctrine. We have come from animal, and from animal man we have to become human man. So the combative natural instinct which we have biologically inherited, if that is not restrained through the soothing influence of brotherhood and of the practical application of Buddha's esoteric doctrine, what other way is there? So, theosophy is wisdom which finds expression in right action. The master says he is no theosophist who objects to this principle. And this means that the Theosophical Society was intended to be the starting point or the cornerstone and foundation for a new universal religion, a future belief system which is meant to unite all of humanity. The master says it was chosen as the cornerstone. A cornerstone is the first stone that is set in the foundation of a building, and it is symbolic of being the essential starting point and the foundation of the future religion of humanity. And so, society is not just one spiritual group, but the basis for the coming of world religion. A religion where all the divisions would be transcended and it would bring people together under shared spiritual truths. The master refers to this letter in letter 33. The master K refers to the Chohan's letter in his letter 33. He says, those greater than we have said that he who thinks the task of working for others too hard had better not undertake it. Those people have no place in the Theosophical Society. If they think that the task of working for others is too hard, then it's better they don't undertake it. These are very strong words, and as I said, in no uncertain terms, the masters have said, Mahachohan has said what should be the doctrine which they have promulgated. In the next half, in the second part, we'll take up the scientific materialism, the struggle for life that he speaks about, practical theosophy, and inner transformation. With this, we'll close today's part 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonalji. I will request Sister Minakshi to do the translation. Then afterwards, we will entertain any question people have or any suggestions. Yeah. Welcome, Minakshi ji.
सभी को नमस्ते और थैंक यू सिस्टर सोनल जी। आज हम महाचौहान द्वारा टीएस पर उनके विचार के ऊपर का पत्र ले रहे हैं, जो कि मास्टर के एच और महाचौहान के साथ हुए वार्तालाप के ऊपर है, जिसमें एपी सिनेट और एओ ह्यूम द्वारा थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी के सुधार के बारे में हुई उनकी बातों के ऊपर चर्चा के ऊपर यह पत्र है। वे लिखते हैं कि मास्टर लिखते हैं कि हम जिस सिद्धांत को प्रतिपादित करते हैं वे सत्य के प्रमाणों के आधार पर है, जिन्हें प्रसारित करने की हम तैयारी कर रहे हैं। वे एकमात्र सत्य होने के कारण उन्हें अन्य सत्यों की तरह विजयी होना चाहिए। यही कारण है कि कर्नल ओलकॉट को बाकी लोगों से अधिक थियोसॉफी के सच्चे मार्ग पर चलने वाला व्यक्ति माना जा सकता है, जो बौद्ध धर्म को पुनर्जीवित करने का कार्य कर रहे हैं। बाकी लोग गुह्य विद्या को ही अपना लक्ष्य मानकर उसकी प्रबल रूप से कामना करना चुनते हैं। अंधविश्वास रहित बौद्ध धर्म शाश्वत सत्य है, और जो व्यक्ति इसके लिए प्रयास करता है वह थियोसोफिया यानी ब्रह्म विद्या या दिव्य ज्ञान के लिए प्रयास कर रहा है। हमारे सिद्धांतों को सत्यता, शुद्धता, पवित्रता, त्याग वृत्ति, दान आदि तथाकथित आचार नीति या विचारों को वास्तविक रूप में क्रियान्वित करने के लिए हमें थियोसॉफी के ज्ञान का प्रचार करना चाहिए और लोकप्रिय करना चाहिए। सच्चा थियोसॉफिस्ट वह नहीं जो दृढ़ निश्चय से व्यक्तिगत निर्वाण यानी सभी ज्ञान और परमोच्च प्रज्ञता का चरम बिंदु है, उसकी प्राप्ति करता हो, जो आखिरकार केवल उच्च और गौरवशाली स्वार्थ है, जो त्याग वृत्ति के माध्यम से अपने पड़ोसी को सही मार्ग दिखाने का जितना संभव हो सके उतना अनेक साथी सहचरों को लाभान्वित करने का प्रयास करता है, वही सच्चा थियोसॉफिस्ट है। मानव जाति का बुद्धिजीवी वर्ग तेजी से दो भागों में विभाजित हो रहा है। एक वर्ग अनजाने में ही अपने लिए लंबी अवधि के अस्थायी विनाश की तैयारी कर रहा है, या अपनी बुद्धिमत्ता से जानबूझकर हार मान लेने से विचार शून्य या चेतना शून्य अवस्था में पहुंच जाता है। धर्मांधता, कट्टरता और अंधविश्वास के संकीर्ण खांचे में कैद हो जाता है, एक ऐसी प्रक्रिया जो मानसिक तत्व को पूर्ण रूप से विकृत कर देती। दूसरा वर्ग अपनी पशु वृत्तियों को बिना रोक टोक के बढ़ावा देता है और जानबूझकर विफलता की स्थिति में पूरी तरह से विनाश के अधीन हो जाता है। भौतिक विघटन के बाद सहस्त्राब्दियों तक पतन को झेलता है। वह बुद्धिजीवी वर्गों के लोग जिनकी ओर अज्ञानी जनता आकर्षित होती है, जिन्हें वे प्रभावित करते हैं और जिनका अनुसरण करने के लिए महान और उपयुक्त उदाहरण के रूप में देखती है, उनका रक्षण और मार्गदर्शन करने के बजाय वे बुद्धिजीवी लोग उनकी अवहेलना करते हैं और नैतिक रूप से उनका उत्पीड़न करते हैं। मास्टर कहते हैं कि अवनतिकारक अंधविश्वास और उससे भी अधिक विनाशक क्रूर भौतिकवाद के बीच सत्य के श्वेत पक्षी को उसके थके हुए अनअभिलाषित पैरों को विश्राम देने के लिए शायद ही कोई जगह हो। आगे वे कहते हैं कि अब समय आ गया है कि थियोसॉफी को दुनिया के कार्य क्षेत्र में आना चाहिए। थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी को मानवता के भविष्यकालीन धर्म की नींव के रूप में, आधारशिला के रूप में चुना जाना गया था। प्रस्तावित उद्देश्यों को साध्य करने हेतु समग्र समाज के उच्च और निम्न वर्गों का बड़ी मात्रा में समझदारी से और विशेष रूप से कल्याणकारी मेल मिलाप निर्धारित किया गया था। गरीब तिरस्कृतों को बंधु कहने के लिए गोरे राष्ट्रों ने अश्वेत राष्ट्रों की तरह मैत्री का हाथ बढ़ाने की पहल करनी चाहिए। यह दृष्टिकोण सभी को शायद पसंद नहीं होगा। वह कोई थियोसॉफिस्ट नहीं है जो इस विचार का विरोध करता है। बढ़ती हुई सफलता और साथ ही स्वतंत्र विचार और स्वतंत्रता पे दुरुपयोग को देखते हुए मनुष्य की स्वाभाविक जुझारू प्रवृत्ति को अब तक अनसुनी क्रूरताएं और जघन्य अपराध, अत्याचार, अन्याय आदि को बंधुभाव के शांतिदायक प्रभाव और बुद्ध के गूढ़ सिद्धांतों के व्यवहारिक प्रयोग के माध्यम से नहीं तो कैसे रोका जा सकता है? धन्यवाद। नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. I would request Sister Sonal ji to be there for a while because there might be some questions or suggestions, ma'am. So let us add to it. I request all participants, if anyone has any question or suggestion, you may share it on a chat which I could read out, or you can unmute yourself and come on screen so that Sonalji could interact. I think an interactive discussion should be good than just answering a question, right, ma'am? Yeah. So anyone would like to add something also is okay. Any concluding thought you would like to share, Sonalji? That also you could probably do, and if there is no question, then we could do the concluding prayer. So any concluding remarks, you might do it.
Yeah.
Please.
See, this is a letter that uh, we don't know which year it was written, and there were people who had just copied it or made cyclostyled versions of it.
Mhm.
And this is a letter that first time I think Madam Levetsky has written as an important letter, and that is how it came about in the circulation. And this is a very important letter for the Theosophical Society because it gives guidance and it's almost used as charter for the Theosophical Society, where these two gentlemen were thinking that they know the West better and they know what is it that Theosophical Society should do. And masters have given in very, very clear terms what the Theosophical Society stands for, which is universal brotherhood above all. They have talked about the spiritual altruism versus the selfish liberation. Um, so the self, I mean, there again, it is the self-interest that comes in a very guarded form. They have talked about not becoming dogmatic. They have talked about how the science and the spiritual wisdom should be integrated by discussions, by thinking, by questioning, etc. And the entire battle against materialism and the moral decline, even more than at that time, it's now evident that we are in the throes of this materialism and moral degeneration. What we can do is only to sow the seeds for the future generations. And so, how theosophy has to be practical, it has to be a living wisdom, and it's only about leading a pure life, having the committing the right kind of actions, and having a compassionate mind and heart. So these are all the guidelines that are given by Chohan, who it has been said by Jinraj Das that for him the future lies open, because Chohan looks at it from a very loftier point of view, and hence can see the future.
Thank you so much. Like, definitely these two things which you kind of shared with all of us, practically living whatever we are learning and understanding, and what is that seed we are sowing for the future generations. I think with these two great messages, we can conclude. And I hope you will be conducting the part 2 also next Friday, right? Thank you so much for your time and such a beautiful presentation. And we will do the closing prayer and then close the session. Thank you. Asato ma sadgamay, tamaso ma jyotirgamay, mrityorma mamrutam gamay. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, सर्वे सन्तु निरामया, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you, everyone. We will meet again on the Sunday session of Indian section. And this particular session will be conducted as a part 2 by Sonal ji. See you on Sunday and Friday. Thank you, everyone.